Now, we hear phrases like the new normal and unprecedented times bandied about very loosely these days. But what does that mean to you as women entrepreneurs in South Africa today? Our panel of judges have identified some of the challenges that you grapple with on a daily basis, and we will hear from them now. We'll also have the opportunity to pose questions from the audience who are joining us via live stream. You can pose your questions to our judges at the end of the session. Now, up first, I would like to introduce Professor Thuli Madonsela. We had a moment to just exchange views back in the makeup room, and I gathered that something that's really pressing on your heart right now are the challenges facing entrepreneurs of mental health and heightened anxiety in a radically changing entrepreneurial landscape, such as that presented by COVID-19. There's the fourth industrial revolution and transitional states induced by social inclusion programs. Would you like to speak to that?
Absolutely. Firstly, just to say thank you, Doreen, for the privilege, and thank you to Santam, FAIRLADY, TRUELOVE, and everyone involved in this process. And congratulations to everyone who's been nominated. The question of mental health is something that has been bothering us as we have been observing government responses to the COVID-19 problem. And we do think that everyone understands that COVID-19 impacts on the economy and on health, and lockdowns have also impacted on people's ability to earn a living, and to a certain extent, the regulations have reduced the health risk. But an area that has not been dealt with is the impact of both COVID-19 and lockdowns on people's resilience. And this is something that at Stellenbosch University we have been talking to various universities and NGOs about, and we wrote to the president about. And I'm glad that Santam, together with FAIRLADY and all of the parties involved in the Women of the Future project, are recognizing mental health as something that is an issue for women generally, but a crucial issue for entrepreneurs. I do want to say being an entrepreneur anyway is about dancing with uncertainty. Yes. But when there's heightened volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, as is happening under COVID-19, the fourth industrial revolution, and being a transitional state, even the toughest of minds have difficulty coping, and I think when women entrepreneurs have had to deal with that. There's various studies that are showing that it is a big issue. I think the NIDCREM study is one of the studies where Stellenbosch University has been involved. Tumor Foundation also coordinated an event where people talked about it. And key among that is that women entrepreneurs not only now have to deal with the uncertainty and the natural risks that go with running a business, you now operating in an environment where the uncertainties are exponential. It's not just the COVID-19, it's government can decide today that we on phase 1, then we're on phase 5, then we can trade in tobacco, then we can't trade in tobacco, and all of those things work on you. But also, people have had to take care of their families. So you're worried about people in your house catching COVID-19. That on its own works on your mind. And what has been added to many families is homeschooling. So you're dealing with just the uncertainties of the possibility of being sick, you're dealing with homeschooling, and you're then also dealing with the uncertainties of running a business just generally, coupled with the uncertainties of the regulatory environment. Even during COVID-19, you get colleagues saying, I can't do that because I will be homeschooling during that time, even though ordinarily you're supposed to have an 8 to 5 job. But because the children are now needing to be sorted out, you have to divide your time between caring for your children and also those who had really, really small children. ECDCs were closed So that was an added responsibility. But also looking after the sick is predominantly a woman's job.
Yes.
That adds to your anxieties, apart from taking some of your time. But hopefully at some stage I will talk a little bit about how many entrepreneurs have coped. And I suspect the ones that we have listened to right now have used the same skills. That's why they've been able to triumph in adversity.
Yes, and we'd all be able to learn a great deal from their unique experiences. Now, yesterday the President presented his economic response plan, recovery plan. Do you think that it goes far enough in terms of addressing these particular issues, you know?
Firstly, I must say that it is a great plan. It has a lot of kernels of wisdom, and it's breaking the mold in terms of how we've done things in restructuring our economy and responding to our dire situation. However, it definitely does not respond to mental health. It doesn't respond to the whole issue of building resilient individuals, resilient families, and resilient communities, which is part of sustainable development goals. And I do think that together with the women in this room and anybody else who is concerned, we need to approach the President to have another pillar in that strategy. In fact, it shouldn't just be an economic recovery strategy. We're not an economy, we're a country of people. The economy is there to serve us. We're not here as slaves of the economy. And therefore, as we rebuild our economy, we should be rebuilding our social fabric to make sure that we have an economy that makes us thrive, that makes our communities thrive. And therefore we will be giants, we'll be a giant among nations, provided our people are thriving.
Yes, so it's not a debate between lives or livelihoods. It's a yes and solution that we are meant to find.
Absolutely. Actually, when we meet in this social justice think tank, including SCOPRA, we say the approach should be threefold: life, livelihoods, and well-being. And the well-being is really about looking at how do we make sure that people are thriving? How do we make sure that families are thriving, communities are being rebuilt? Because everything has been affected, including extended families. Those of us who have extended families, for a while you found that you couldn't visit your grandma. And that has created a new culture. If we don't reset, you'll find a situation where nobody visits anyone. Because every time we get used to something for over 21 days, it becomes a new habit. But the whole issue of mental health, people have become isolated. And entrepreneurship generally is an isolating enterprise, especially in those first 1,000 days, because you might just be the only employee of your enterprise, or you might have 2 or more people. So now add COVID-19, when you couldn't even visit your family or be visited by your family, that has left quite a scar that needs to be rebuilt. But thank God, I think the women entrepreneurs themselves are probably operating like women like Charlotte McClegg, where, yes, we want government to do something to create an environment that fosters resilience. However, it takes you also to be agile in responding to the environment. And what I've learned from women such as Charlotte McClegg and Olive Schreiner was that they built these resilience skills in themselves. You find that these are women that had sharpened levels of emotional intelligence, which is the ability to move your emotions with the environment, to be agile in responding to your environment rather than letting the environment just press the button with you. They had deepened spirituality, which is spiritual intelligence. They had deepened levels of social intelligence, which is the ability to leverage the community. We say it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to achieve anything that is worth celebrating. And they also had high levels of intellectual intelligence, which is something we can breed every day. And I suspect, or what I've learned from the mostly young people that we're going to celebrate today, including the ones that are not even in the final group, is I think a lot of them have all of these intelligences and they cultivate them every day.
Mm-hmm. And they're growing up in an environment where they need to develop those skills. A quick question from our audience. My business has suffered due to COVID. I've had to let go of staff. My revenue has declined dramatically. How do I get my business back on track again? I feel at a loss. We've all heard those words.
Right.
Prof?
My answer would be firstly to say I'm sorry about what has happened and not to diminish your pain. This is what quite a number of businesses are struggling with. I think the figures were given by you and Susie about at this stage more than 2 million people have lost their jobs, which obviously means the owners of those businesses are also in dire straits. And sometimes you lose a job being the only employee in that company. What I would suggest to the person would be two things. One is to explore the government framework. We do know that 500 billion was set aside to help people to get loans, but banks used the standard framework for awarding loans. The president spoke last night and said he's been engaging with banks about relaxing the modus operandi so that more people can be caught into that. The second advice, just based on what I've seen with entrepreneurs during COVID-19 and over the years, is to recognize what has happened and accept it, which is what we've heard from all of the speakers. Secondly, reset. And reset might mean pivoting or might mean diversifying. And pivoting means, obviously, you can, well, I know that Dawn gave it a different interpretation, but the one I got at Harvard is when you get off track completely. And I know a woman, for example, who lost her job at a company, but then she baked a cake for her daughter. And people liked the cake and people started ordering cakes. And then she pivoted into making cake. So that's one thing that you may want to consider is pivoting. The third option is to look at the option that Susie spoke about joining hands with others, because the future of work is going to be about how agile are we in dancing with change and finding our place within that. But just going back to the point that was made by Rudy, whatever you do at the Tuma Foundation, we say remain ethical, purpose-driven, impact-conscious and committed to serve, because when all else fails, your heart of service is going to keep you going and it will open new opportunities for you.